Now what we want to do before we actually send the request to this username check file, we want to check whether the username is equal to nothing or not. So I'm going to say if username doesn't equal nothing, so i.e. if there is some text inside there at least, because we don't want to be sending nothing to the username check.php because it would be a waste of resources. So we pre-check the username if it's equal to nothing. If it isn't equal to nothing, that means it must be equal to something. So we can go ahead and start calling username check.php or sending some data to this file. So we use the post HTTP request. This is the basis of it. However, we're going to supply 3 parameters to this. The first parameter is going to be the file that we're checking inside of. So this is php/username check.php. You'll see if you take a look at my directory structure, I keep all my PHP files inside this PHP directory, so the db.php here and the username check file here. In the root directory is index.php, and then in JavaScript we have this users.js which we're currently modifying. So we're searching, we're sending data to this file here, and the data that we want to send is specified within curly brackets. So we want to send a variable called username. Don't mistake this variable here for this one here. We're sending a variable called username, which we'll pick up in this file later, and the value of this is username. So this value here corresponds to this, however this is the name of the variable that we're sending. The last parameter we want to give is a callback function, and this is going to take a parameter data. Now data is going to be the data that's returned from username check.php. So for example, the username is available or not. We're essentially going to echo out a value in this file, which will then be returned to this data variable. So we bring that down a bit just to make everything look a bit tidier. Okay, so now what we want to do is before we put any content in here, we want to focus on username check.php. And the first thing we want to do is connect to our database. So I'm going to outline some PHP tags, and I'm going to use the MySQL connect function to connect to my MySQL server. And this is located on localhost with a username of root and a password of nothing. Then we want to select the appropriate database. In this case, we are selecting the database called jQuery. So we go ahead and type jQuery in there. Now we can leave this file alone now. Username check.php will include this file, so we can close that off. So inside username check.php, we want to go ahead and include this file using require. So we require db.php. This is just going to make sure that this file does exist and our script doesn't continue if this file can't be found. And obviously, like I said, if we were to say echo something back in here, so for example username available, this value here would then correspond to this. It would be returned within this data variable here. So this then would be inserted into the data variable or passed back to the data variable. So whichever we echo out, we might echo out username available, or sorry, that username is not available. We can then apply to this span here, and we do that by referencing or selecting the span, which is username status, and then we set the text of that to data. So remember, data is up here as well, so that corresponds to that. So now that we've done that, we can just go ahead and test this. I'm just going to echo test, and when I come over to my page, now what's going to happen is when I type something, we get this test variable sent back, as well as a flicker of a searching text as well. Now we do have another problem. When we revert back to the having nothing, we still get this searching sign here. So after our AJAX call here and after our if statement here, in actual fact, sorry, before this if statement here, we want to include it as an else. And the reason for this is if the username does equal nothing, we want to go ahead and put nothing into this username status span. So username status.text and nothing in there. And what that's going to do is we can type something, we can have this value here returned from our PHP file here, but then if we revert back to nothing, everything disappears. So we want to make sure that we don't include any aesthetic errors in our code. Okay, so now that we've done the users.js, this is all ready to go, and whatever's returned from username check will be placed into the span just after this input field. So essentially our jQuery is working. We now need to create the PHP file that will send this data back. So the first thing we want to do is check if the username variable has been passed to this file. So remember I said that the variable is called username and contains the value username up here. So we use this variable name here in PHP to pick it up. So it will be $_post because remember we're sending the value as post data, all these values contained within here as post data.